Thank you so much, Christina. So it's my job now to welcome Philip Levine back to the podium for his own reading. And my colleague in the Department of English, Professor Nanda, is going to help me do so. So can you come up here? Join me. I thought to welcome Phil back up here, I would not just shower him with further praise of my own, although it's evident how much he enjoys and values it. I thought I would welcome him back up here by reading a short poem by a 24-year-old worker named Shu Liji. Shu Liji will always be 24 years old because he took his own life last month. Shu Liji was a worker at the Foxconn plant in Shenzhen, which makes iPhone components for the US and global market. But he was unable to unlock himself from the trap that capital set for him, and in which he was ensnared like a lion. A trap that was global in size and local in its violent effects. Shu Liji couldn't survive it. But when I read his poem, and he left several poems, and you should look for him on the internet and read his poems, I recognize in his poetry of this 24-year-old man the indelibility, the invention, the brilliance with image that I also recognize in the work of Phil Levine. I mean, in this work, you're going to hear a poem in a minute, and you're going to hear the real anger and the real rage in this work, and also the real love for the world, and the real intimacy, and even the regret for leaving it. The last poem he wrote before his death, he said, the last line of his last poem is, "I was fine when I came here, and I'm fine now that I'm leaving." So this poem that we are going to read together, because Professor Da has kindly offered to say a few remarks and read this poem so you can hear the Chinese, and then I'll read the English. This poem is really part dream and part steel. And so I honor Phil Levine tonight with the reading of this poem by Shu Liji, translated by the authors of the blog now. I will first really invite Professor Da to the podium to graciously discuss and read this poem for you.
Hi, I'm Nan. I'm very honored to read Shu Liji's poem called "I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron" in the original Chinese, besides Christina Pugh and Philip Levine. The poem is very short, and it's also in Chinese, so I hope you won't mind my digesting a little bit of it for you so that you can see how well it fits in with our conversation here and with its illustrious peers. In "I Swallowed a Moon Made of Iron," Shu Liji turns a familiar colloquialism of complaint that I can't swallow it anymore into a trope for simulating as closely as possible the intake and output of global industrial capitalism. A series of things which the poet/factory worker has swallowed is purged and becomes exactly the polluted landscape of contemporary China. Curiously, it is this polluted landscape, and not the poem itself, that Shu Liji calls the poem at the end of the poem, which means that he rejects lyricism, the idea that a poem is a beautiful personal thing that the poet makes out of ugly things, an externalization of interiority and thus commodifiable, co-optable, romanticizable. Here, the poet's voice and the entirety of his despair is inscribed in his role as a medium in the garbage in, garbage out process that migrant workers in China daily face. He can no more, nor want to lay ownership to the poem qua poem than the iPhones that he made before suicide. So without further ado, I swallowed a moon made of iron. 我咽下一枚铁做的月亮。我咽下一枚铁做的月亮。他们把它叫做螺丝。我咽下这工业的废水，失业的订单，那些低于机台的青春早早夭亡。我咽下奔波，咽下流离失所，咽下人行天桥，咽下长满水锈的生活，我再咽不下了。所有我曾经咽下的现在，都从喉咙拥涌而出，在祖国的领土上， 铺成一首耻辱的诗。
I swallowed a moon made of iron. I swallowed a moon made of iron. They refer to it as a nail. I swallowed this industrial sewage, these unemployment documents. Youth stooped at machines die before their time. I swallowed the hustle and the destitution. I swallowed pedestrian bridges, life covered in rust. I can't swallow anymore. All that I've swallowed is now gushing out of my throat, unfurling on the land of my ancestors into a disgraceful poem. That was a poem by the Chinese poet Xu Lizhi. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite to this podium the poet